Thank you for being here. So before we begin, I wanted to talk a little bit about Sony Corporation's new branding campaign, Boundless by Sony. This campaign is truly a part of our brand DNA. As you know, Sony is a creative entertainment company with a solid foundation of technology. That means, guys, we are innovators. And to innovate, you must be able to see the world without limits, boundless. As a campaign, Boundless by Sony is focused on highlighting Sony's relationship with creators and how they collaborate to bring together technology and entertainment. It is also intended to inspire the next generation of young, inspiring professional creators. Boundless by Sony underscores Sony's commitment to getting closer to creators by developing and distributing digital content that showcases a variety of creators from industries such as film, music, gaming, and more. Sony's technologies drive the imagination of creators across all disciplines in the only way that Sony can. So tonight, don't forget to share your experiences and ideas with us using the hashtag #BoundlessBySony. Okay. This evening's panel features 3 innovators and creators who have remarkable professional backgrounds and who will be discussing their work, technology, and the future of entertainment. The theme of this evening's discussion is experience, immersive, or reality. Will a border still exist? And on that note, I am thrilled to welcome our panel, Mike Larson, Cory Bar Log, and Glen Gainer. Welcome, gentlemen. Please take a seat. Okay, so let's get started. But first, let me introduce you guys to our creators. Mike Larson is the sound engineer of I Am Other Entertainment, and he first started working with Pharrell Williams in 2007 at South Beach Studios in Miami, where NERD was recording Seeing Sounds. And since then, he has worked on Pharrell's solo albums and engineered his production for Rick Ross, T.I., Wiz Khalifa, and more. Welcome.
Thank you, Amy.
Cory Bar Log is the creative director at Sony Interactive Entertainment. He is a video game director and writer, known for his work on God of War from 2005, God of War 2, and God of War most recently in 2018. Welcome.
Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Glen Gainer. He is a Hollywood film producer and the head of physical production for Sony Pictures Screen Gems. He has managed and overseen motion pictures at Screen Gems since joining the company in 2007, including such features as Burlesque, Friends with Benefits, and Think Like a Man. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you all for being here. I'm so excited, and I'm sure everyone else is too, so let's dive right in. Okay, so as a creator, this is a question for all of you, how do you play with technology? Mike, you want to start?
That's a great question, and it's pretty wide open. I think one of the greatest things about being a creative is getting to use new technology as it becomes available, and especially in today, speaking from a music perspective, it used to be the case where if you wanted to make a song or an album, you needed a whole studio's worth of equipment, from huge mixing consoles to a lot of outboard gear, expensive microphones. I think the greatest thing about technology today is that you can do so much with so little. You know, people are making amazing records in their bedrooms just on a laptop and a very basic setup, and it just kind of levels the playing field for people that want to participate in creative arts and express themselves in that way.
Awesome. All right, Cory?
I use technology very poorly. I actually think one of the coolest parts about it is using it incorrectly. Figuring out a new way to do something by actually not even understanding what you're supposed to be doing, and you find something that nobody expected or imagined. So much of what we do in gaming is kind of duct taping things together and figuring things out on the fly, because a lot of what we're doing, we're kind of writing new code for that. So being able to MacGyver your way through things is really cool.
All right, Glen?
Technology has changed everything about how we creators create. Because when I started as a film producer, I think the hardest thing about making film back then, as Mel Brooks said, was that you had to put all those holes in the film sprockets, right? And there's like 1 million of them, because everything we shot was film.
Right.
And then this digital evolution came into place, and everything started shifting. But there were still these larger camera body apparatus, and we still had a very skilled crew to tell our stories. But we're in such an amazing time now where technology has become so portable. Dare I pull it out, you can shoot something on this Xperia, which I've done in films. Right? We're empowered like we've never been before.
Yep.
So I think technology has really enabled so many storytellers and young people coming in to the industry, and people shaping their own vision based on this new kind of technology.
When I was in film school, we actually cut negatives. So
Yeah.
we were shooting on Bolexes, and we would actually cut that. They actually had digital editing in one of the other buildings, and even like video editing, but what we were learning on was cutting film, knowing full well none of us were going to ever use that, but
Yeah.
it gave us a greater appreciation to never do it again.
That's right, exactly, yeah. Well, it used to be, film editors would say, well, I'm going to cut this much out of this scene, and I'm going to cut that much out of that scene, because they were, thinking about in feet.
Yeah.
Right? And now everything's changed so much that you just say, take one frame out of here.
Right.
Let's see that quicker. And that kind of change in technology has changed the way we tell stories. We look at the filming process as well, and the editing process. Typically when you see an establishing shot, you're on that thing for no more than 2 seconds now, because everything moves so fast.
Yeah.
That it does. Okay, well, Glen, I want to ask you another question. How do you use collaboration in your creative process?
I do it all by myself.
I think you're lying.
I like the way you think.
Exactly. This, collaboration is the most important thing about storytelling, because it's about sharing a vision. In my industry, in the movie industry, specifically, it's very director-specific, very director-driven. And we have to understand the person's vision. I've been blessed to have produced a lot of movies and overseen a lot of films, but what I tell people is, at the end of the day, I'm simply a humble servant to story, because that's what this is all about. And to me, it's collaborating to figure out the importance and value of that story.
Okay, great answer. Okay, Mike, how do you create an immersive experience for your audience?
I think the end result of any person creating music is the desire to perform that music live. I mean, that's not always the case, but I think overwhelmingly music is envisioned sharing that music with a live audience. And if you can take steps within your creative process to have moments within your song that, whether it be like a crowd participation moment, a call and response, you always see artists hold the mic out to the crowd just to get them engaged. That is a way that you can draw that audience into your moment, into your scene, and help them experience things, basically from the artist's perspective, from the songwriter's perspective, whether it's drawing them in with like a lyric or, a great melody, a great rhythm. These are all ways that you can, engage that attention of the audience and get them really to to experience what you're going for in that case.
Okay. All right, so I have a question for the three of you again. What is your advice for young creators when it comes to technology? Cory, why don't we start with you?
All right.
Pass.
Look, use anything, any way you are inspired to do it. Like, you don't need anything specific. I was telling people earlier, when I was growing up, sort of visual effects in the film industry, I learned about it through Cinefex magazine and any sort of behind-the-scenes things I could see, but it always felt like this black box, that everything was so out of touch. You know, even when they started working on computers, it was like Silicon Graphics workstations that were super expensive. You couldn't do it at home. Now, we have access to everything. I mean, you can make your own game all by yourself at home, and it all begins with just getting your hands dirty, trying it out, and not knowing is actually a really good thing. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I don't feel like I know anything at all. I'm making mistakes every single day, but those mistakes yield something cool every once in a while. That's probably the only reason I still have a job, is because my mistakes sometimes pan out.
Right. The happy mistakes.
Right.
And as Glenn pointed out, you have all the technology you need in your pocket to create, whether it's a film or a music piece, a beat. You can record right into the phone. Many laptops nowadays come with software built in that you can get very, very far and achieve a really professional product just by tinkering and just the way that you would learn a basic like word processing software. It's all very user friendly, and you can get a great result just with the bare minimum equipment.
Yeah, we're at a grassroots creation sort of period of time where it's becoming even more sort of the nexus of all the great ideas from the future are coming from people who are working on their own, just grabbing the things that they have around and taking on something before they know what they're taking on, and that's amazing. Everything I've ever worked on that was decent scared the hell out of me the whole time, and I had a feeling that I was just sort of holding on for dear life, and I kind of feel like everybody, when you're starting out, that's sort of what it feels like, and honestly, when it stops feeling like that, you need to try other things, because it should always kind of feel like that.
Can't be afraid to make mistakes and to try new things, and you might stumble onto something that resonates with an audience, and that's the goal.
Oh, you can be afraid. Be very afraid. just push through the fear, right?
But do it anyway.
But ask yourself, what is the message you're trying to convey? Because if it's a visual medium, games, movies, and we talked about this, how games are gamifying. Games are movifying, movies are gamifying, and I say that because we're all trying to tell a visual and audio story, and every image should be conveying part of your story. I just had an experience. I'll share this experience with my friends here, just between us.
Just between us.
Right?
Just
no
us.
one will tell anybody about
Don't
this.
say anything, but
We're cool.
I was just in Hong Kong, and I was at the JW Marriott, and outside were 1.2 million people marching on the streets. But I happened to have been inside, and I thought, well, here's an interesting story, and I had a tool with me, right? And so I noticed a cake, and the cake just said 2020, happy 2020. So I started on that cake, and I pulled back on just using the phone, and I saw people enjoying themselves. So now you have two pieces of the story. Cake, people enjoying themselves, it must be a beautiful day. And I passed my family and looked out the window, and then the third part of the story was people protesting, right? That's a beginning, middle, and end, and that's telling a story. These stories are all around us, and we have this technology now to allow ourselves to tell fantastic stories. You don't have to write them, we can find them as well. You can just discover the world. It's really our oyster, that's the cliche. It's a cliche because it's true now more than ever.
Okay.
Basically TikTok.
Yeah.
Okay, so as a creator, do you ever feel limited by reality? Who wants to take that one? I'll leave it open.
Reality can be limiting if you're stuck to a geography. Mm-hmm. Reality can be limiting if there's a physical nature that's blocking you. That's why, of course, there are many ways to tell a story. In games, of course, you have open worlds. You can create anything you want. But in my discipline of making movies, we're oftentimes limited to a destination. So really, it's about sometimes curating your story and your vision to the world that's physically around you. Of course, you have virtual sets. I'm very proud of those. And that's the way to collapse geography. And that's going to become more and more important because as we have more opportunities to tell stories, we want to find more ways to tell them. And so by collapsing geography, you'll be able to be in 3 or 4 locations, perhaps, all in one day. But really, for me, as a storyteller, it's the physical world around me and covering the distance that is always the biggest challenge.
Okay,
I feel
Cory?
limited by reality when I say, hey, we should try this, and then everybody says, that's not possible, or that's going to be really hard, or even worse, that's going to be really expensive. That part of reality sucks. But I don't know, the way I see it, a lot of the times, from the storytelling mediums that we work in, I feel limited in the sense that ours actually have to make sense, whereas reality, a lot of the times, doesn't make sense. Human beings naturally make crazy, weird decisions, and when you see something sort of in the news and you're like, that's insane, that would never fly in a sort of traditional storytelling. So you sort of find the sense that you have to really curate so much of it, but you want to incorporate a little bit of that chaos and that unexpected nature, but it's still kind of got to feel grounded within that reality of the world you're creating.
Okay. Mike, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think music is probably one of the main art forms where it really relies on the imagination of the listener. A lot of times we'll want to just put on some headphones and listen to our favorite albums and be transported off to some exotic destination, and then you sort of lose yourself in that, and you can imagine anything you want to, and set to the soundtrack of your favorite music. And I think with the art form of the music video, that also allows the artists themselves to interpret what it is that they saw or had envisioned when they wrote that song. And sometimes that can add to the storyline or the narrative of the music. Sometimes it's a total disconnect, and they're singing or performing about one thing, and meanwhile they're on a planet somewhere, and it just totally doesn't even make sense, but it's what they envisioned, and that's the way it comes out. But being able to just kind of get lost in the music and let it take you away on a journey is one of the great things I think about the music as an art form.
Absolutely.
But one thing I want to add to that, because right now this is reality, but the moment you capture it electronically, it's now art. That's the thing. It's that as soon as we capture it, we are now interpreting reality. And that's what's so much fun with the audio, with the game, with stories on film for movies and television shows, or blogging. These are all interpretations, artistic interpretations of reality, and it's a lot of fun.
Yes, definitely. Okay, so you guys know they are all at the top of their fields, but can you kind of tell us something that makes you feel like a beginner still? Anything come to mind first?
Makes you feel what?
It still makes you feel like a beginner. You're at the top of your game right now, no pun intended.
I feel like a beginner all the time and everything. Man, every time I start anything, I get a paralyzing fear, more so than throughout the duration of the project, that it's going to be terrible. And it's this wall, and it feels like as I get further on in my career and in my advancing ages, the wall gets thicker each time at the beginning of these projects, where I have to break through that and let go of all the noise. I don't know, I think I'll retire when I don't feel like a beginner. Because I think once you start feeling like you're an expert, you stop
lose that edge.
Pushing yourself. You lose the edge. You stop pushing yourself to prove something. I feel like we all do this, put ourselves through this weird sort of masochistic process because we feel like we have something to prove to ourselves, maybe to other people, yeah.
Okay, do either of you have something to add?
Yeah, with with music and with like doing recording sessions and stuff, I'm blessed to be able to work with different artists almost every single day. And no two people are alike. Everybody has their own process and their own writing process, creative process. So adapting yourself to the new artist that's there that day could be completely different than the way you worked the day before.
Right.
So you always have to be on your toes and flexible in your workflow. That's one of the greatest challenges about being consistent and also keeping the quality of the audio and of the recordings of the art form really at a high level. From day to day, it could be a million different things that happen, but you have to be ready for all of them. And that's one of the most fun things for me. It's just always fresh, and it always feels new. And I half the time am scared and it's like, oh, this is gonna go terrible, and then you end up with a great record at the end of the day.
Right.
You can look back and be like, man, we started with nothing. There was literally nothing down, no sound, and we built something, constructed something that is going to live on, and people are going to enjoy and be fans of this song, and that's just a great feeling.
Absolutely.
Is it the same for you guys that the best things that you've done feel the worst
Yes.
to make them?
Or that you didn't realize people were even going to like it or would be a hit or anything, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've never felt that. Like I always feel like this is crap. But like the struggle through it ends up being the harder it is, or the ones where you're just like, this is a train wreck constantly.
Or maybe not seeing the vision at the beginning.
Yeah.
You just got to stay true to the intention. Be true to the story behind God of War. It's like, guys, why does that scene exist? Why does that scene exist, and what are we trying to achieve in that scene? I've got to ask that question when we make films. What's the priority? Is the action the priority? Is the story? Is it about the scares in the film? Right? And it's always just leaning into the value of your intent, right? That's the most fun for me, is saying, okay, guys, they're not seeing this film for that reason. They're really going to be seeing it for this reason. So let's put more value and attention here than somewhere else. But I'm sure you have to deal with that a lot.
Yeah.
Building worlds, right? You got to say, okay, guys, at what point do we say that's good enough? At what point do we go to package or in music? When do you say you're finished in the kitchen?
Right.
I
feel like we have to get pulled off of it, right? Like somebody's trying to break up a fight. That it's like you keep working, and then it's like somebody has to pull you off and say like,
don't touch it. It's perfect.
You're done.
Yeah.
And then you feel like you've done that too many times that now that becomes part of the process. So that even though you feel like you're done, you're like, can you just pull me off of this because I feel like it won't be done until that happens.
That's right, exactly.
There is such a thing as over tweaking, and
yes.
You ruin that initial inspiration that led you to make those creative decisions in the first place.
How many times have you done, 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 takes, and then you edit the thing together, and then you say,
guys,
the
first one was
I'm going back. Yeah. Go back to the first take. Yeah.
I've actually had that experience where we shot a take, and the first take was perfect, and I was like, okay, that's great, but I don't feel like anybody's going to believe me if I say that this is the one, so I let it go for like 2 more takes.
I know.
And then I say, well, you know what? I've thought about it. Let's best number 1.
I know. That's why we say, perfect. Do it again.
Right. Immediately. Go back to 1.
Yeah.
I was working with George Miller a long time ago, and he had said something in a review, just like a standard visual effects review for something, where he started talking about this film, we're going to have to defend every single piece of imagery in the frame.
Yeah.
So every frame, every aspect of the frame, we have to defend why is this thing here.
Yeah.
And it seems so obvious, but it wasn't until that point that I realized, like, oh, that we really should be looking at it of that level of fidelity. Maybe not all at once, because that's overwhelming and it'll kill you, but as you kind of work in layers almost to ensure that you're not putting anything there that isn't absolutely pertinent to the current sort of scene as well as like the trajectory of the story.
Yeah, that's right, exactly. It's like in film. You can have continuity problems, and you say, well, you know what? Her hair is different, but it's a better take.
Yeah.
And you always got to go with the better take.
Right. There could be a Starbucks mug in the frame. You know what?
Yeah, in a Western.
It's a better take.
The mug needs to be there in a Western. Yeah.
They had Starbucks back then.
All right, I've got one more question for you guys here. Your work obviously has a huge audience, some of them here tonight. How do you know something that you create will connect with so many different people? We'll start with you.
Wow. I mean, the short answer is you sometimes don't know. It might take something else happening that suddenly draws people's attention to that piece of art. You know, probably the biggest song I ever worked on, the song Happy by Pharrell. That song was out for 6 months on the Despicable Me 2 soundtrack and didn't, hit the charts. It wasn't on radio. It wasn't moving the needle at all. And it took them putting out a 24-hour music video about 6 months later where people finally started paying attention and, oh, you know what, this is actually kind of a cool concept. And from there, the song took off, and it was something that nobody expected, not even people at the label, there was nobody like pushing for the record. It just happened because people gravitated towards it and started playing it, nonstop, and became one of the biggest songs, of the last decade. So you don't always know, and sometimes the songs that you think are going to be a hit, turn up to be just, another album cut, and it's hard to predict what fans and what people will gravitate towards.
What would you say, Cory?
Oh, I would agree and go one further and say that is spooky action at a distance. We don't know anything about it. Like, there's probably some people who are like, I could tell you what's going to be a hit. None of us know, honestly. And some of it is our own self-deprecating view and say, like, anything I do is crap, so nobody's going to like it anyway. But even if you get past that, you have no idea what the masses are going to connect to. Even when you sort of play test or do focus tests or have people listen to things before, when it goes out in the wild of everybody else, it's anybody's game. Like, you just cannot at all predict it. But if somebody is able to do that, like, consistently, then they are amazing. They're going to get very rich.
They're making a lot of money in this town by
right. So I guess Marvel is really good at that.
There's a whole sub-industry of computer programmers trying to create algorithms to say, if you run your script through this machine, this program will tell you what will connect and what won't connect. But at the end of the day, you have to believe that you're telling a story that's going to empower somebody, that's going to excite somebody. We're just trying to create suspensions of disbelief or move people. We're trying to get people to react. In my world, in filmmaking, we have what's called the lean back experience. People sit back in your home and you just watch a film. In your world, they're leaning into the experience. In your world, they're feeling it. So each one of us is adding some experience that we hope people do relate to. But I remember once being in New York, and I was at a film festival, and a woman came up to me and she said, I've seen some of your films, and we were talking a little bit, and she said, I just feel like my life is so stressed, and I want to tell my story, but I just don't know if I should. I feel like I'm alone. And I looked at her and I said, I know how special you feel, but trust me, you're not alone. And to prove that, promise me you'll get your story told, because if you're feeling this way, someone else will, and someone will thank you for you sharing your story about how you feel in New York City as a woman your age at this time. Tell that story, right? That's the best thing I can hope for, is that people are empowered to tell their stories.
Did you tell the story?
Not yet.
Oh. I thought that was going to be the caption.
Coming
It's like, and she won an Oscar.
This was recent. And she won the Oscar for it.
Yes.
All right.
Let's focus test that one.
Yeah. And then I'll do a test screening in Canoga Park, and we'll see how it does.
There you go. We'll see the numbers.
All right. So I'm actually going to ask you one more question, and just kind of sum it up briefly. What is your mission as a creator? If you could put it simply, what would you say?
Somehow be able to do this for the rest of my life. My mom gave me great advice as a kid, and she told me the secret to happiness in life is to find something that you really love to do, and then find somebody that can pay you to do it. So if you can achieve those two things, mission accomplished.
You're in good shape.
Absolutely.
You even got the mission part in your answer. That's
did.
fantastic.
See what I did there?
Yeah, I see what you did. That was very good. Man, my mission is to make people feel something. Ideally, continually throughout the experience, that they feel what I am hoping that they feel, or something unexpected that's good, right? That isn't frustration, unless frustration was the goal at that specific point. To connect with people through the work that collectively sort of the team does.
Okay,
Yeah.
Glenn?
My mission is to remind people around the world that there are so many beautiful voices and cultures that are wonderfully different than mine, than yours, and to hope that they know that because we tell stories, that they can tell stories. That's what we need now more than ever.
Awesome.
You
Very
can do it too.
inspiring.
Yep.
What'd you say?
You can do it too. That's the message you want to communicate.
That's the message. Well, this has definitely been a fascinating conversation, and we do have a few minutes for some questions from the audience, maybe two. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask?
The best question wins the car.
Yes, car behind you, right? We can,
But you have to give us a ride back to the hotel first.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
yeah.
Any question? We've got a microphone. The
Right up front.
Right there. Hello. Come on down.
Hello.
Hey.
Hi.
Thank you for all of your insights. I was struck by your question about how do you know that something is going to connect with your audience. And today, so many business decisions are being driven by data about what the consumer prefers, what the consumer is interested in, but maybe the creative world is not making decisions based on consumer preferences. Do you foresee that happening as data becoming more and more available about what people want, what people like? Will that drive your decisions in the future?
So I love that question. You know, there are different quadrants of markets. So in cinema, we have a 4-quadrant movie, and a 4-quadrant movie is meant to hit the globe. That's something that you say, that this is going to work all around the world, people are going to relate to this. And then you have so-called 1-quadrant movies, where you say, guys, this won't work in many territories. It's fine. We're going for a core audience that understands these values. But here's the good news. You should tell core audience movies, because if you really do it well, you then get a crossover audience. People who say, I didn't know about this culture, but I heard it was a really good movie because a lot of people are talking about it, and then it becomes a crossover movie. So I always tell people, tell the story that you're most passionate about, and if you do it very well, you'll get a crossover audience.
I agree 100%. The idea of the data is a really interesting tool. From a creative perspective, it's an interesting tool that, for me, is a singular input. It begins with this idea of what do I want to tell? What can I feel passionate about for 5 years? What do I have a strong point of view on? And then throughout that, it becomes like this demon that you end up boxing the whole time, because then people are telling you, well, that's not going to appeal to these people, and this is not going to work for here, right? And everyone is always trying to tell you what they know for sure. And it's just an input. It isn't necessarily the final word, because there's a lot of situations I've been in where they would tell me, this is terrible and it'll never work, and then it works. And then there's times where I'm like, this is going to be amazing, and it's terrible, right? So I think it's very hard for any of that stuff to truly predict it, because so much of it is based on the culture at that moment, right? We're basing it on previous times when a movie would release, a game would release, and what everybody's sort of feelings were at that time, the very complicated mix of everything in the world. That's changed when you release the next thing. So, that's why something that worked before won't necessarily work again.
Yep. I agree with what Cory said. It's a very useful tool in some cases, but especially in music, I believe that the music that really connects with people and really makes an impact at any given time is something that doesn't exist currently in the pop space, the popular space in that sense. There's plenty of examples in music where a band had a skyrocketing success because they did the opposite of what was popular at the time. So those, numbers and data and stuff, they can tell you what's, working overall in a sense, but I think really making an impact requires you to take some risks and some chances and, be true to yourself and not, all right, well, everybody's making like trap music, so let's just do that because we know it's going to fit in with a radio mix and it's going to, it works at this tempo and stuff like that. And I think the more risks you can take, the higher your chance of success and really making an impact artistically.
Yeah, it's like Bohemian Rhapsody. Right?
Yeah.
Long song, opera in it, this is never going to work. Huge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I think when people tell you it's never going to work, that's when it's going to work. Maybe that's the indicator. I think we just figured this out, guys. We just cracked the problem. We're good.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense.
Thank you.
Someone else have a question? Come on down, sir.
Come on down.
Come on down.
Hello.
Hello.
First, Cory, God of War, amazing. Congratulations.
Oh, thank you, sir.
One of the best games ever.
Oh, wow.
Forever.
Thank you, sir.
You win.
Car's
Take the car.
Yeah, no, like, well, I'm a hardcore gamer, and also, like, I consume a lot of TV and movies. And I know that to tell a story, it's very complicated to do it in, like, an hour and a half format, 2-hour format, in comparison to a game that can last up to 52 hours, like God of War, open world, amazing RPG, right? But, like, do you think that in the near future, is there going to be like a mix of the two mediums? I know that we're like halfway there with interactive movies, like
Talked about that earlier.
I think like Black Mirror.
Yeah, Bandersnatch.
Yeah, and like for example, like Death Stranding, that they uses motion capture of famous actors to play the characters. But is there like, do you think that in a future, is there a possibility that the two mediums will merge?
I mean, I feel like we're already
We're here.
starting.
We're side by side.
Yeah, we're currently merging. Yeah, I think it's happening. You're going to see 52-hour movies. We're already, that's like the Watchmen cut 4.0. But yeah, I think we're going to increasingly see more of the learnings going both directions. I think for the longest time, what we were doing, because our industry's so young compared to the film industry, that we were kind of learning from all the things we grew up on, all the films and television we grew up on. And I think now we're starting to see people going into films that are growing up on games and kind of bringing some of that over. I mean, for me, I just recently saw the Mandalorian, and it's like the backbone for the Mandalorian is an RPG. Right? He basically goes into a bar and gets missions and then gets paid and then upgrades his armor. Sorry, spoilers for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. Then upgrades his armor throughout the whole thing.
Tell him about the final episode.
Right. I'm going to tell him what Baby Yoda's real name is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like we're already doing that influence because we're seeing people more open to things that they grew up on. And seeing very experienced filmmakers realizing, oh, there's some interesting opportunities in both sides.
Yeah, the worlds are coming together. There's no question. I mean, we know about cinematics in the games, and we know movies are borrowing ideas and are inspired by games. Branch narrative, as you mentioned, is just around the corner. It's just a question of asking the audience, when do you want them to lean back and when do you want them to lean forward? Because that's really about that's the intricacy of the balance. If you can cry in a game, then you've already accomplished what you're asking us to do. And when I played The Last of Us with my kids, and when one of those characters dies,
that's such a famous.
We're just going like, what the? That did not just happen, right? And the giraffe scene at the end, and that. If that doesn't move you to tears, I don't know what will, right? So it's happening, and I think we want to see it happen more.
Yeah.
And like you guys were talking about a little earlier today, just the idea of the cutscene and the, having it be a fully cinematic moment that, occurs at certain points within the game, and that even that in its most simple form is a form of marrying cinema with the gaming experience.
And I got to say also, last thing, when I played God of War, I was always picking my camera angles. I was always kind of like doing this, and pretending I was
filmmaking
directing.
inside.
I was filming
Yeah.
inside your game.
There you go.
Maybe there's your next movie, maybe.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll take one more question. Come on down, sir.
Okay, so you guys, you do a lot of incredible work with huge crews. I want to know the process of, this sounds really weird with the echo. I want to know the process of you guys weeding out effective, I guess, criticism and actually implementing that into a film or not? Or like, what's the process of it?
In other words, what's the feedback process?
I guess.
Like, how do we know when we've finished, perhaps?
I guess being able to say, okay, I appreciate your input on this certain aspect of what we're creating, but I think that this would look better, or maybe your input of it would be a lot better. And this isn't gonna just be on film, with video games and also music as well.
I'll lead into that because I had a deal with greenlighting a movie once, and we just didn't have the amount of money that we traditionally would have required. So, and I had a phenomenal director, one of the best directors in the business, great crew that I was hiring, and I said, guys, your way is the right way. The way you've been making films, the way you tell your stories is the right way. I'm going to introduce to you another right way. And see if this will work. The reason why I'm suggesting this other right way is because I don't have that X amount of dollars. And everybody listened and leaned, and I said, look, it's either do it this way, or we may not be able to make the movie in the first place. So that's an example of inspiring people to change the way we're going to make content. But there's so many ways where we all lean into each other and listen. But in my world, the director has to have a strong voice. But the producers have to also collaborate and understand in a very collaborative environment how we're all going to achieve the same vision.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of follow the gut instinct or the spider sense, right? It's how I initially feel when somebody gives a piece of feedback, and then I step away from that and then see how I feel a few hours later or the next day, and then kind of go with that. So if I'm feeling very strongly that like, no, I just don't agree with that. And there's, you're working with 300 people in one studio for 5 years, you're gonna get a lot of feedback all the time on literally everything. And to be able to kind of discern, okay, this is right for what the core of what this should be, or that's unexpected, I really should be aware of that, or nope, absolutely not. And to me, there's no science to it. It just is like, it's that, it feels this little pit of my stomach feeling that's like, okay, nope, I don't think we can do that. And sometimes I have to wrestle with the decision for a while. Sometimes it's a very powerful person within Sony that's giving the feedback, so I have to be like, that's awesome, and I'm totally going to do that. And then they'll forget about it like in a month, so we're cool.
Yeah.
It's also key to not take any feedback or criticisms personally. It's a thing where if you've all got the same vision in mind, or you want to achieve the best product that you can, those criticisms are only going to help you, see things from different viewpoints. And the great thing about, these art forms these days is that technology has enabled us to try a million different things and try different ways and be able to audition those different versions relatively easily. And oh, you have a suggestion? Okay, let's try it, even if you don't think it's going to work, let's try it anyways and just see. And either they're going to, double down on their criticism and be like, yeah, see, that works better. And then, or it proves them wrong on the spot. And your way was actually better. And then you can quickly, move through those points. And it's having the more notes, I think, the more points of view, the better. It just will help. It's like chiseling away at a statue or something. You can just get those fine details, dialed all the way in, and still give everybody their input and their say-so.
A 10-second anecdote, because I know you want to wrap up. A great cinematographer once said this to me. I'm not going to name the movie out of fairness, but he said, did you see this movie? And I said, no, I haven't seen that yet. He said, it's a terrible story, but the 3D was so good, I saw it twice. So it just depends on where you're coming from and why you're giving criticism, right?
Yeah.
It's what inspiring that comment.
That makes perfect sense. Thank you so
And
much.
honestly,
I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
It's a superpower to not take it personally. So if you're able to do that, that's amazing. But don't beat yourself up if you can't, because I literally take all of them personally. I just hide it and then drink.
I have this thing where I think I'm always right.
That's right.
Yeah. Me too. I'm always right. All right.
Cool.
All right, guys. Well, gentlemen, thank you again for being here and for giving us some insight on your creative process. And for those of you in the audience, please stay and connect with your fellow creators. There is so much great creative energy going on in our booth right now. And we hope you can make new connections at our meetup, forge some new relationships, and benefit from this forum for creators, and discuss what you plan to do with Sony's technologies. There is still time to enjoy all of Sony's technologies, food and drinks, but don't forget to get this original bag from tonight. Before you leave, exchange your token at the information desk, which is right at the front. Lastly, today's panel session will be uploaded on our campaign website, so be sure to visit it here, www.sony.com/boundless, which will open up tomorrow morning. Thank you again for joining us this evening, and let's hear it for our panel one more time.
Thanks.